You're listening to Psych with Mike. For more episodes or to connect with the show with comments, ideas, or to be a guest, go to www.psychwithmike.com. Follow the show on Twitter @PsychWithMike or like the Facebook page @PsychWithMike. Now, here's Psych with Mike.
Welcome into the Psych with Mike Library. This is Dr. Michael Mahan, and I am here with Mr. Brett Newcomb.
Once again.
Into the breach. Cry havoc and...
Unleash the dogs of war.
Let's slip.
Cry havoc.
Let's slip. Isn't it? Let's slip. Let's slip the dogs of war.
I don't think so.
But anyway.
Been too many years.
Yeah.
I would hazard a guess that it's been 55 years since I memorized that.
That surprises me because I
went to a good high school.
We've had this conversation before that I've always thought that you were a Shakespeare guy because you...
Oh, I had this college or high school teacher that took us through 3 or 4 different Shakespeare plays.
Yeah.
He really knew his stuff, and he made it come alive, and it was beautiful. And he made us memorize different
and that's what
sections.
you've told me, is that it's because you memorized those, and you were impressionable. Really, you were impressed by this guy.
Educational tool.
Yeah.
I think we've gotten away from it too much in our culture.
Yeah. Oh, there's no question.
I have trouble remembering my phone number now.
Cursive writing
all the time.
And things like that. I mean, there are
cursive writing and memorization in the same category of learned behavior.
No. They're not. I'm saying if we're talking about things that we don't teach anymore that had value.
Yeah.
No,
we don't teach the capital of Tasmania.
Well, exactly. I mean, like, I was never ever required
$12
to learn the names of the presidents in order.
Yeah.
And so now, I mean, I can't name. I mean, I'm probably starting from. I know that I can from John Kennedy forward.
Our friend Mike Norton, memorized them in order. So he's always asking me a question: who was the 13th president?
Yeah.
Who was the 27th president? I'm like, Mike, I didn't learn it that way. Well, who came before this one? Who came before 16? I said, well, I know who 16 was. I have marker points. But he enjoys catching me out.
So he learned the numbers. So he knows them by number.
He knows them in order, and he knows the number that's attached to the order.
We're right. Yeah.
So he knows 2 things, I guess. I've always wondered what Mike knew. Apparently knows 2 things.
He's kind of a savant.
Of a type. Mike, if you're listening, we love you.
We love you. He's not listening.
Yeah.
But I sent you a link.
Yeah.
And I know you always do the show prep, so I know you. Did you like it? Did you even care?
It's pop psychology.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. But
that's because you're so shallow.
No, the reason is because I come across these things,
and you think, oh,
and they spark things in me. So the link was, which you may not have recognized, was from Brides Magazine.
I did see that,
and it was talking about one-sided relationships.
I thought the value of it intellectually was so
and it was clearly
stellar.
Pop psychology. But what it triggered in me was this realization, and not a realization, but it brought back to mind this idea that there's a lot of pop psychology that gets bandied about in our society that people who know what they're talking about would say that's probably not a way you shouldn't take that to heart and live your life by it. And so this was one of those things, is that, it's Brides Magazine, and they're talking about these one-sided relationships and how you can identify if you're in a one-sided relationship and what you should do if you figure out that you're in to me, it's like taking a quiz in a book to be able to determine whether or not your spouse is antisocial. I mean, first off, there is no quiz for being able to determine whether or not somebody's antisocial. But I've heard people have come to my office, my family members have said to me, well, this person is this because I saw it in a magazine. And I'm just like, no, that's not how it works. But so it's frustrating to me.
The only valid source for that kind of interpretation is Mad Magazine. I don't know that I've ever read Brides Magazine. I've seen it on the shelf, but I refuse to pick it up.
Well, you've probably never been a bride.
Probably not.
So then you'd have no reason to pick up a copy of Brides magazine. But do you agree that there's a lot of pop psychology that gets bandied about in these kinds of environments, and if people read it and it's just lighthearted and they don't
think that passes for wisdom, is very common.
Yeah. So what does groupthink?
You get just a little clique of people, and they all think the same thing. They all tell each other the same thing, irrespective of any facts or evidence. But they all feel a certain way. Like, I feel like vaccinations are an abomination.
Right.
I feel like immigrants are terrible. I feel like Democrats are terrible.
And the problem with that is that there's another side. And so who gets to be the arbiter of which one is correct, right? So we would say science says that vaccinations are actually a very, very well documented way of not only protecting yourself, but also protecting society and of being able
There's data. There's evidence.
Okay.
There's proof.
But then if people, and then this is what, so I've really been having a lot of conversations with my colleagues at the university talking about, for me right now, I feel like that people who want to purport to be on the side of science have to really make sure that they're dotting all their I's and crossing all their T's. They have to be doing it better. So the way that this came out is that in the university, we use the word pedagogy. Mm-hmm. When in actuality, we should be using...
Is that a pedagogical thing?
Well, it may be, but it's inaccurate. We should be using the word andragogy, because pedagogy means to lead children, and we're teaching adults, so we should be using the word andragogy. And so I was
From
talking...
androgynous?
No, andro meaning man, and goji meaning teach. But so, I mean, if you don't know the Latin, it doesn't make any difference to you. But if you do know the Latin, then it actually does make a
So how
big
many
difference.
angels can dance on the head of a pin?
Okay, I knew that would be your retort.
Well, you like all these comfortable little narrow but deep pockets that you have to stay in to be legitimate or to know something. I'm not a narrow and deep guy. I'm a wide and shallow guy.
Okay, but then if you're going to be wide and shallow, how can you...
Sometimes the emphasis is on wide, sometimes it's on shallow.
But how do you refute somebody who says, I think that vaccines are an abomination? Shouldn't they be given the breadth of wide and shallow?
Well, I define them as shallow. I don't need to convince them. I don't need to give them my time of day.
No, and we really don't. I mean, we're not in the business. We don't have to convince anybody. But I'm just saying, if we're going to say that science is a thing, then we have to really practice that, don't we?
Well, I make assumptions when I hear a statement. So if you say to me, vaccine, I'm not going to get this vaccine because they put little digital things in the vaccine and go in your arm, and then they can track you, and they can know exactly where you are all the time. So you got one of those on your hip. It's called a cell phone, and they can track you even when you turn it off.
And people won't leave their phones at home.
Exactly.
No, that is a breach of logical consistency.
But then when you grit your teeth and glare at me and say, I'm against it, I ain't going to do it, then I just dismiss you. I don't care anymore. Like, okay, fine, go away.
So you don't feel like that then the other side has to work harder to try and do it more correctly, because you don't believe that there's any way to ever...
I don't even tell those people, because they won't listen, that if you look at the data in all of the counties where people are dying from COVID, the preponderance of them are in counties that voted for Trump, that are populated by the 70% Republicans that say they're not going to get a vaccination because they want to have liberty. I said, go for it. Enjoy it. Kill off your own population.
Well, yeah. I mean, ultimately, that's kind of...
I mean, that makes sense to me.
Where I kind of default. But, okay, so then this magazine article that I sent you.
Oh, yeah, the Bride.
Brides magazine. And
is that Bride of Dracula?
No.
No, that's a movie,
Yes, it's a funny movie.
Yeah.
Well, there
are several iterations.
Yes. I don't think either one of us would necessarily agree with the psychological validity. Is that fair? Of the article?
Yes.
Okay.
You lost me, but
Yeah. And so
I was lost, but now I'm found.
Do you believe that there is...
But now I see.
Now you see. That there is any detrimental effect for that kind of information? Or do you think people just have the right to...
I think it's misdirection. I think it gives you a false sense of comfort, as if you've learned something that's going to make a difference in your life. Mm-hmm. You look at your relationship and you say, well, it's one-sided. He's unreasonable. It's unfair. He dominates what we do with our money. Mm-hmm. And I bring home a check. That's just not right. And then that's as far as the conversation goes. Mm-hmm. You know, and the article clearly says if you approach him about that, you should make a little list of all your concerns and then go and approach your partner and say, I think you're dominating our conversations around money. And he'll see the light and change, and nothing flat, and you live happily ever after. I don't think it works that way.
Right. Well, it clearly doesn't work that way. So do you believe that there is there harm in an article like this being presented, because it's Bride Magazine, so people are getting
pseudoscience. There's a whole marketplace for pseudoscience.
Yeah.
People say things like that, and they get some attention, they get some notoriety, they make a little money. I don't think it's harmful.
Okay. So
I don't think it's helpful, but I don't think it's harmful.
Okay, tell me more about that. How is it?
I don't. It helps any people who are caught in those relationship patterns that are potentially destructive or hurtful. It doesn't help them get out of it. But I don't think it's harmful to. You know, it's kind of like laws about advertising, truth in advertising. You know, if you market your product, you have to make it attractive. You have to make it sexy. And you have to suggest, well, gosh, you should buy this. And if you have this, you'll have clean breath and your teeth will sparkle and everybody will like you and want to be around you. Well, reality doesn't work that way. But I don't know if that causes you any harm if you bought Crest over Colgate toothpaste because I marketed it to you.
Right.
Was it Dreikers? Who's the psychologist that studied all that stuff?
Yeah, Dreikers.
I was saying it wrong. Did all that research and created a whole field of work for people with psychology degrees.
Rudolph.
The red nose?
Rudolph Dreikers.
Oh, okay, sorry. I thought it was a fill in the blank.
Free association.
Yeah.
So let's take our break, and I'm going to ask you a question when we come back.
Okay. You always do.
I always do. Hey, Brett, if you were going to tell somebody to check out something on the internet to help them with their mental health, what would you tell them?
I'd tell them to listen to Psych with Mike.
Why would you tell them that?
Because it's probably one of the most easily listenable experiences you can have that will give you information that's useful for a whole spectrum of concerns that people have.
I agree, and I have actually been told that by at least a dozen people, several of whom were not married to me, and some of them didn't even know me.
That's amazing.
That is amazing. It's when we get that kind of feedback from people, it is so incredibly humbling and overwhelming for me.
It is for both of us.
Yeah. So we really appreciate it. And as always, if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike. Okay, we're back. So my question is, let's assume, so somebody's getting married, right? So they bought Bride Magazine.
Rudolph Dreikers or was it Theodore?
Rudolph.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just checking. Want to know if you knew.
And he was actually an existential psychologist. He was at a contemporary of May.
Rollo
May.
Yeah. Damn, we're good.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean anything, but it's good.
And so you're getting married, you've bought Brides Magazine, you've read this article, and you've evaluated your relationship, you've determined that it's one-sided, and so you've done what the article tells you to.
How many brides are going to go home, read that magazine, and then get upset because they don't have enough money or they don't have the right color, the dress that's in season this year is purple. Well, I got a blue one, so I'm not going to be in season. I'm not going to be the bride of the year. I'm going to be Bridezilla.
But what happens if they make the list, and then they go and they confront their future spouse, and he doesn't change?
Well, what are the odds that he's going to change?
He's not going to change. He's not going to change.
Yeah, what's he going to say? Bullshit. You don't know what you're talking about.
Uh-huh.
And she's going to go, oh, But it said in Bride's Magazine.
Right. And then he's going to say, well, that's your problem is you're reading Bride Magazine. But you don't think that that's hurtful. You're not offended
I don't think she's going to
that they present it as,
I don't think she's going to go and have a conversation with him about it. I think she's going to make her little list and hide it somewhere or memorize it and internalize it and save it until there's a big explosion or a meltdown. And then she's going to throw it against the wall with a whole bunch of other complaints that she has, which are not going to change either of their patterns. They'll just periodically throw up, and then they have to swallow all that stuff back in again until they can't tolerate it anymore, and then they throw up again. The pattern of their relationship ebbs and flows with that intensity. And sometimes people do that so they have better sex. Let's fight so the sex will be better.
Yeah,
and we have makeup sex. Yeah, there's a whole exactly
psychology about that.
But they don't give you that in Bride's Magazine.
No, exactly. Well, and that's my point is that maybe this triggers me because I feel like that it's
you wanted to be a June bride.
No.
Oh. Okay.
I was happy with getting married in September, but I feel like that it's easy for people to pretend to be psychologists.
Yeah, we know a lot of people that
and like, but I don't think people are they're not putting medical advice in Bride's Magazine. So why is it psychology advice?
But most of those pop journals are full of interesting stories that have no factual basis or foundation, even about medicine.
Yeah,
they just sound good. They're feel good, sound good.
And maybe this only registers for me.
I can't believe we're talking about this because I can't believe you found an article from Bride Magazine that you thought was worth talking about. Because that's really shallow.
I didn't. I found an article in Bride's Magazine that made me think, is it okay for pop psychology to be promoted in the zeitgeist of the social awareness? And I don't think that happens with medicine, but maybe it does, and maybe I don't recognize it.
So we could have the same conversation about whether or not becoming a fanatical fan of a professional sports organization has any relevance, accuracy, data support, maturity, benefit. Because I don't think so, but you do.
Yeah, I was going to say that feels like a shot.
It was. Well, no, it was a description.
So you're saying that I look at this and say, oh, no, this is not good information. People should not be exposed to this. But it's just all in good fun, and people really aren't.
It's capitalism alive.
Yeah.
I mean, you bought all the Rams gear. You became a super Rams fan.
Yes, I did.
You had a jacket and a shirt, and you'd go to the games and you'd wear all that crap, and you'd cheer for the home team. Then the home team moved, and you were crushed. You got all that stuff in the closet now going, I cost you $500.
Got rid of it.
Oh, well, there you go. And you probably didn't get $500 out of it.
No, I got nothing.
But you spent that on it.
Way more than that.
Was that harmful to you psychologically? Did that cause you true angst in your life and relationships? Or was that just a way you spent some time and some money that you had?
It would probably depend on who you talk to, because there's some people who would say it did cause angst. But for me, if I were being honest, I don't feel like that, no.
Yeah.
No, I feel like it was something that I was into at the time, and it made sense when it made sense, and when it didn't, it didn't.
And I laughed at you about it then.
Yeah.
Now I have some compassion because I know you were truly wounded when they left town.
Yeah, I was, but
you were betrayed.
But you know, and I was, but when I stopped being a sports fan and started doing other stuff, I was absolutely amazed.
The whole home team BS is about marketing.
Yeah.
If I can make $10 million in St. Louis playing on the football team, but they'll pay me $20 million to move to Los Angeles, why would I stay in St. Louis?
Well, you wouldn't. There's no reason to.
So then how can I get you to say, root for the home team?
Yeah.
What does that mean? Now, there are psychological underpinnings that do have value, and we can have that conversation about belonging to something, about a commonality of perception, a commonality of messaging, a commonality of presentation that we then become a team part of that has some value. But that's not the conversation that we have.
Right. When you talk about the specific situation and the way it played out for the Rams, I believed that there were rules and that St. Louis had followed the rules, and there were two other teams that were in play at the time, which were Oakland and San Diego, and those states, those cities did not follow the rules, and yet the Rams were the team that ended up moving. And what became very apparent is exactly what you said. If I can make 10 million playing in St. Louis, but I can make 20 million playing in Los Angeles, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And so it became very clear to me that it's really all just about sports.
But you
really all just
follow
about
the
money.
devolution of all of that. So St. Louis now wins $700 million in cash that they're going to get from the NFL. The governor of Missouri has appointment responsibilities for a committee to sit over that money and decide how it gets spent. He's never bothered to appoint anybody. The committee that's established, all of their terms expired 4, 5, and 6 years ago. But when they announced the $700 million, within 3 days he suddenly made new appointments because the other terms had expired. And why did he do that? Because he wants to control who gets the piece of the pie.
Absolutely. I mean, and
now, do I fault him for that? No. I mean, that's how politics works.
Yeah, they got $750 million.
Yeah.
But
the lawyers get 270 of that.
Yeah. And so we're only getting 500 million, which is half a billion, right? Which is amazing. And St. Louis is going to find a way to spend that frivolously. I mean, I don't think we're going to solve any problems.
Well, you got three different groups.
With that,
you have the Stadium Commission, then you have the City of St. Louis, and you have the County of St. Louis. And then you have the state of Missouri saying, me too, me too, me too. You can't do that without me. And what they'll do in Missouri is what they always do in Missouri. If they don't get that piece of the money, they'll say, well, we just will reduce your budget from the general fund because you already got $500 million.
Right.
We don't have to pay for police in your...
Right.
Hello.
I mean, it's... And like I said, I think that's going to be a debacle.
Bend over, you'll like it.
But so then, do you believe there is anything... I was asking, do you believe there's anything detrimental about pseudopsychology in these magazines? Do you believe there's anything detrimental about the facade of home teams?
I think the whole cheerleading rah-rah of sports team is a very diminutive form of mob psychology.
Yeah.
And I think mob psychology is harmful. I mean, look at the riot on January the 6th. But I think there can be balancing positives if you carefully create them.
Right.
That can generate benefit.
But this is what I'm really, though, wondering is, because I agree with you about the mob psychology of it, is there any way to use that for good? Could we not have root for the home team? I mean, did we do that during World War II? Was it root for the USA?
Yes, we did it. God's on our side.
Yeah.
We did it during the Crusades.
Yeah.
Ask Constantinople about that.
And do you
the Fourth Crusade?
But do you believe that was positive, or
only for the ones that took the money home?
Well, that's what I was going to say. But it's still only positive for the USA. I mean, there are other places in the world that think that we were tyrants during World War II, so that we committed war crimes by dropping nuclear weapons on Japan.
Right.
So I guess whether or not these things are viewed as positive or negative depends on who's doing the viewing.
Well, and the evidence and the foundation there. I mean, Harry Truman was presented with an option: invade the Japanese home islands,
right,
and suffer an estimated 1 million dead American soldiers, American, British, French, or drop this bomb, and the ones that are going to die are the Japanese. And so you lose 700,000 Japanese, which is not to be dismissive of the pain and suffering, or do you lose 700,000 American soldiers?
And still, how many Japanese? I mean, there are still going to be losses on the Japanese side, right?
But somebody has to make the decision, and then history has to balance out whether or not that was a good decision. And I'm glad I didn't have to make that decision.
Yeah. Do you think that it is possible, even theoretically, that we could be root for planet Earth? Or would we need some foe to be able to be the foil on the other side?
Well, history and anthropology will tell you that there have always been demagogues who generate antipathy and antagonism for an enemy, because if you focus the attention of your people on the enemy, then they don't focus their attention on the way that you govern.
Right.
So it helps you stay in power. It helps you keep control.
Right.
So that's the history of mankind. If you're asking, do we find another planet? We find alien life? Is it going to be the Earth is the good guys and the aliens?
Well, I'm just really right now consumed with this idea of is there even a possibility that we could come together more and be less divisive as a species?
Well, you have a prime example of that right now: climate change.
Exactly. That's exactly the thing I'm thinking about.
Yeah. So we'll see.
Can we all come together and work?
Is out.
Yeah. And my hope is that we can, and that if we do, that we can use that as a model for being able to do more of that. But I don't know. I mean, I think that there's so many different individuals on the face of the planet. Each of them has their own agenda, and it's just so hard.
Well, every one of them is hungry.
Yeah.
They all want to eat.
Yeah.
Doggone it.
Yeah. Well, I was feeling optimistic, and then now I'm not.
Okay.
So
reality-based therapy.
So this was kind of a far-reaching. It was sparked by something that I saw in Bride magazine. But I think that it is a valid and worthwhile, at least intellectual exercise, even if we don't come to any answers. But I do hope that at some point we're going to be able to come together more as a species and really just recognize that if all of us do well, all of us do well. And that's okay. And nobody has to lose because all of us do well.
Would that were so.
Yeah. So if you want to get a hold of us, you can get us through psychwithmike.com. If you want to follow us, you can follow us at psychwithmike on Twitter, at psychwithmike on Facebook.
And don't forget to renew your subscription to Bride magazine.
It's in the mail.
All right.
The music that appears in Psych with Mike is written and performed by Mr. Benjamin DeClue. And as always, if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike.